Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to One Health and Free Roaming Cats. And we're going to be giving a panel presentation on a collaborative approach on cats and birds and other wildlife in British Columbia. Thank you for attending this virtual event. Before we begin, I would like to say that although we're meeting today virtually, we're all joining from our home and work offices, places that are based on the traditional and unceded territories of the First Nations people. I'm fortunate and grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on the traditional and ancestral and unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. By means of hosting this webinar today, we're hoping to provide information for veterinarians and vet techs on the issues that we'll be talking about today. And on behalf of the Stewardship Center for British Columbia, I welcome you. My name is DG Blair, and I'm Executive Director of the Stewardship Center for BC. And we are a nonprofit organization with a vision to help British Columbians understand, enjoy, and sustain healthy ecosystems through stewardship. It is my pleasure to welcome the speakers today. They include Dr. Elizabeth Gao. She is an animal behaviorist, ecologist, and conservation biologist working as a research scientist for Environment and Climate Change Canada, and as an adjunct professor at the University of Guelph and Simon Fraser University. Her research program involves collaborating with scientists, NGOs, veterinarians, and others to understand the impacts of outdoor cats on domestic animal, environmental, and human health, the One Health system of thinking. Following Elizabeth is Dr. Amy Wilson. She is a veterinarian and ecologist, and she completed her master's and Ph.D. at the University of British Columbia. Her veterinary accreditation through the Western College of Veterinary Medicine. Her research interests are in wildlife disease and conservation ecology. Unfortunately, Dr. Wilson is not able to attend today's webinar, so Dr. Gao will be presenting her slides. Following Dr. Wilson's presentation, Tanya Luszcz will be speaking. She works as a species at-risk monitoring biologist with the Canadian Wildlife Service, Environment and Climate Change Canada. She also works with partners in reducing the impacts of outdoor roaming cats on species at risk and birds and other wildlife. In her spare time, Tanya is a member of the board of the Okanagan-Similkameen Conservation Alliance, where she coordinates nature-based school programs and leads tours for the Meadowlark Festival. Finally, we have Meghann Cant, and Meghann has worked for the BC SPCA since 2009 in the areas of research, education, advocacy, and policy. She has a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science with a Master of Science in Animal Welfare, both from the University of British Columbia. She has volunteered with animals in a variety of settings, from veterinary medicine to wildlife rehabilitation to senior animal rescue. She has a passion for working collaboratively with stakeholders from other sectors on complex animal welfare issues. So without further ado, I'd like to turn over the floor to Dr. Elizabeth Gao. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DG. So we can go to the next slide. Okay. So domestic cats have fairly recently evolved, about 10,000 years ago, from African wild cats. And because of this, they have many of the same characteristics as their wild ancestors. Many of the same morphology, their behavior, all kinds of various characteristics are very, very similar to their wild ancestors. Next slide. Because of this, they have this very wild side, and it probably are all very aware of, if you have a cat, how wild it can be. And so cats have these dual roles in our society as both companion animals and historically and also currently in some cases as pest controllers. Next slide. And so we think about cats, and we're talking about outdoor cats. We're not talking about necessarily the cats that live in our homes and never really go outside. So I want to introduce you to 3 cats that have very, very different lives. And so Klingon on the left is an indoor only cat, only goes outside on a leash that his owners help leash train it with a nice harness. And Klingon has all kinds of enrichment in the home, gets fed, whenever he wants, and is a very, very happy cat indoors. Sorrento is an indoor-outdoor cat, and Sorrento loves to spend time in his yard, and visits the neighbor's yard, and even visits the neighbor's children every so often. But then one day, Sorrento went missing and was never found again. Now, Bobby is a cat that doesn't have owners, doesn't have a home that he returns to. And Bobby really loves he has this huge range that he covers, and he visits all the different female cats and probably has many, many kittens that he's sired over the years. And Bobby isn't fed by people, and so he persists entirely off of eating animals, such as chipmunks or other birds. Next slide. Now, it's our behaviors and what we do with our cats, whether we keep them indoors, or if we allow them to roam, or if we even allow cats to persist without owners in our cities and in our natural spaces. And so cats that are not spayed or neutered, very quickly, one single female cat unspayed, within about 1.5 years, could produce over 30 kittens. So it's very easy for populations of cats outside to get quite large. And domestic cats are actually the highest number of mammals in urban spaces. Next slide. Now, there's a lot of debate, particularly amongst veterinarians, about the benefits or the cost and benefits of allowing cats to roam freely outside. If you own a cat, whether to allow it to go outside. And one of the big arguments is like, well, because of this wild side of cats, they're recently evolving from African wildcats, they need to engage in natural behaviors such as climbing, scratching, hunting, which is a natural behavior, spraying, and so on. And putting a cat outside is also sometimes believed to reduce unwanted behaviors, such as because the cat's getting enrichment by being outside. And then on the other side, there's sort of other situations where people in cities, sometimes cats are the only animals they really interact with, because many city neighborhoods don't have a lot of wildlife, at least that people are noticing and seeing. So they can provide people a connection to nature that they don't have otherwise. Next slide. But there's a lot of negatives to allowing cats to roam, and this is some of the focus of what I'll be talking about in what we're here, as well as what Amy Wilson has provided that I'll be presenting. And so cats kill a lot of wild animals. This is really into the trillions worldwide, and in Canada, we're looking into the hundreds of millions, if not into the billions across all different animals. And cats also are costly to society due to this number of animals that they kill and the diseases that they spread. And so cats are considered, in a recent paper in Science that estimated the cost to society, cats are third behind mice and rats and mosquitoes in their damage and their costs. They also spread disease, which Amy's Wilson slides will go into a bit more, such as cats can, say if they capture a bat, they could spread it to their owners, or cats can get disease from us and spread it into wildlife populations. And then cats face numerous welfare threats and risks, such as being attacked by coyotes or being hit by cars or other blunt instruments. Next slide. So cats are really this One Health issue. There's a multitude of different facets. So when we think about One Health, this is the connections between the environment, animals, and human health. And so to get a healthy ecosystem, healthy animals and healthy humans, you kind of need them all to be relatively equal. We need healthy ecosystems to help animals be healthy, and we need healthy ecosystems for humans to be healthy. And so in our society, these are complex, often multi-coordinated, collaborative type of situations or challenges that we have to sort out. So they take working with multiple stakeholders. Next slide. And when it comes to cats, there are a lot of different groups of people that care about cats. There's you here, veterinarians and shelter workers, cat owners and cat lovers, people that are making policies, for instance, municipalities about cats, ecologists and epidemiologists and nature enthusiasts that are concerned about some of the environmental impacts that cats have, as well as the general public that both be positively or negatively associated with having cats that roam into their yards. Next slide. And so solving problems or these challenges, many challenges surrounding outdoor cats we have to think of very integrative or progressive approaches. And this is where a concept that we've been using in BC and actually across Canada called translational ecology comes into play, which is a set of 6 principles that are non-linear. They can occur in any order, but they provide sort of foundational information about how we can collaborate to work together to develop and conduct research that addresses sociological, ecological, and political aspects of a challenging problem, such as outdoor cats, which are a very challenging problem. Next slide. So now I'm going to do my best to present information from Dr. Amy Wilson. Recognizing I am not a veterinarian, so some of this is outside of my domain, but I will do my best to present some information from her. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So I already talked about cats as a One Health issue. And so I briefly touched on wildlife predation. I'm not going to go into that because I think it's really relevant to talk about some of the human and cat sort of domestic animal health and welfare issues. So next slide. So cats can bring home a wide number of zoonotic diseases. It's well over 100 zoonotic diseases that cats can have, including parasites such as roundworms, tapeworms, and hookworms, ticks and tick-borne diseases, Lyme disease, and a bunch of other things, pretty well anything that ticks carry, fleas and flea-borne diseases, including Bartonella, which is cat scratch fever, plague, which has been spread by cats, as well, of course, some of the other rats and mice, typhus, scabies, they can get salmonella, ringworm. These go a wide suite of different zoonotic diseases. Next slide. And one of the more common ones that you may have heard of, you probably have, are rabies. And rabies is certainly a huge concern in the US. It's a big concern in Canada as well. But particularly, it's very frequently reported in the US about cases of cats having rabies. And because cats often have very close human contact, they're sometimes the main vector for how people get rabies comes from cats. And this is because with more cats that are outside, it can increase the exposure that cats have between the bats, the skunks, raccoons. As I said, they're very common species to have rabies in the US. There's often not adequate vaccinations for cats, whether it's cats that people own and put outside or cats that don't have owners and live on the street. And there's lots of interaction. And this, of course, has a big public health cost of vaccinating all the cats and wildlife against rabies. Next slide. Another major zoonosis that you may have not heard about, or maybe you have, is Toxoplasmosis gondii. And toxoplasmosis is a parasite. And wild felids or domestic cats are really critical in the life history of Toxoplasmosis gondii. So you have an egg that is, or it's in the tissue of mammals, and it's been anything warm-blooded, basically. And so a cat will capture a mouse, and it's infected with toxoplasmosis that's in the tissue. This parasite then goes into the digestive system of the cat, and then as the cat poops, all these oocytes, the eggs, are transmitted into the environment. And so cats play a very critical role, whether it's a domestic cat or wild felid, in transmitting and producing these eggs that go into the environment for toxoplasmosis. Next slide. In toxoplasmosis, it's spread through the environment, and one of the big ways is through water runoff. And so it sometimes accumulates, is believed to accumulate, particularly in marine environments, which affects a lot of marine animals. And it does get into bivalves and vertebrates as well. Next slide. And toxoplasmosis is found all over the world. It tends to be very associated with people, where there's lots of people, there's lots of toxoplasmosis, or there's a lot of also a lot of cats. There tends to be a lot of toxoplasmosis. So go to the next slide. And so often people don't always know they have toxoplasmosis, but it can also, so it can be asymptomatic as well as symptomatic. And it's known to cause a whole suite of various conditions in people and animals, such as their alteration of neurotransmitters and chronic inflammation in the brain, which has a whole variety of different neurological disease characteristics, behavior, including increasing risk-seeking and traffic accidents. They also can cause cellular damage and chronic inflammation, including in the eyes, inflammation in the eyes and scarring of the inner eyes, so it can affect eyesight, as well as it can concur with other diseases, heart disease and cancer. And in Canada, these mothers are tested for toxoplasmosis because of the effects that can have on during the maternal effects, as well as during gestation, higher miscarriages, birth defects, and even neurological disease in infants. Next slide. So toxoplasmosis also infects wildlife, and it's well known to persist. It's in polar bears, it's in penguins, it's in all kinds of different animals, sea otters, and it presents in different ways depending sometimes on the different species. For instance, neurologic disease, encephalitis in sea otters, ocular disease in raptors, and blindness in canaries. So this is a concern in birds, where we're seeing some differences in their eyes that may influence collisions of structures such as windows or other things. There can be cardiac damage, heart damage, reproductive, sort of affecting the fetal development, and behavioral effects as well, such as mice that may have toxoplasmosis actually going to cats to increase the chance of the toxoplasmosis being transferred to the cat. Next slide. And so it's widespread, all kinds of different animals, birds, mammals. I think it's also in fish and some marine mammals. So it's spread quite rapidly and throughout wildlife systems. Next slide. So next, I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the effects on the free roaming cats, and about some of the very, according to Amy Wilson, unacceptable welfare standards. Next slide. So there's the 5 freedoms from domesticated animals. There's a freedom from hunger and thirst, that all animals should not be hungry, they should have fresh water and to maintain their health and vigor. A freedom from discomfort, and so that they are comfortable, including having good shelter and so on. A freedom from pain, injury, disease, and so that they have rapid diagnosis and treatment. And a freedom to express normal behavior by having the right space, facilities, and company of other animals if they are social animals. And a freedom from fear and distress by ensuring that they have conditions of treatment which avoid mental suffering. Next slide. So warning, there are some graphic images ahead related to free roaming cat suffering. Next slide. So this is not the case in all free roaming domestic cats, but many of them do experience and have higher chances of experiencing immunosuppressive viruses, stress, particularly if they don't have veterinary care. They can get severe fungal, bacterial, or parasite infections. And this is, some colonies have this, others don't. But it does happen in free roaming cats higher than cats that have owners. Next slide. Cats can also, they can be exposed, I mentioned earlier about blunt force trauma from vehicle collisions, other machinery. Cats really love to climb up into car engines and into machinery. In construction sites, they like to go into machinery. They have a high chance of being depredated by wild predators in cities, domestic dogs, and animal abuse as well. There's a lot of instances of people abusing cats. and environmental, and particularly in some areas of the prairie provinces where it gets very, very cold. Lots of cats get frostbite, so they lose their ears, and their paws are also frostbitten. They can also get dehydration, starvation, and chemical and thermal burns. Next slide. And so there's a lot of approaches for owned cats that are very good to support their enrichment. And Meghann will go into some of this a little bit more. But really, there's so many great alternatives that there isn't necessarily a reason why cats should be outside when we can provide strong alternatives for them to be indoors. And so it's really important when we talk about thinking about moving towards, and in some cases, places are moving towards no roaming bylaws, that people are prepared. They're learning about enrichment and how to provide enrichment in the homes for their cats. Next slide. There's been a lot of positive developments, particularly from the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association, including a position statement talking about using evidence-based and effective humane initiatives to reduce the population size and impacts of free-roaming owned cats, as well as abandoned or feral cats, to help improve their health and welfare, as well as the public and ecological health. So there's been a lot of improvement on this front over the past several years. And next slide. And now Tanya is going to speak.
Tanya, you want to unmute there?
Thanks, DG. Yes. Okay, can you see my slides and can you hear me?
Yes, on both counts.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, for some reason, it did not. Uh-oh. A bunch of my slides just disappeared. Oh, it was my cat. Stand by. I'm blaming the cat. Okay, I think we're good. Apologies. Okay, now we're where we should be. There was a feline on the keyboard earlier. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to share some of the work I've been involved in engaging veterinarians on the issues of cat overpopulation, outdoor roaming, and impacts to wildlife. But first, how did I get involved in this? In 2013, a series of publications released by scientists from Environment Canada were made. They each estimate the number of birds directly killed by various sources like transportation, agriculture, forestry, oil and gas, etc. Calvert et al. Synthesized all of the studies into one paper. And as you can see here, after habitat loss, cats are the #1 human-caused source of bird mortality. So that's why I ended up getting involved in this issue. Veterinarians are integral to this issue because veterinarians are the only group certified to perform surgical sterilization. Veterinarians are seeing clients at key teachable moments, like a new cat or an injured cat, where they can have influence and behavior change. Yet we didn't really know anything about their views on the topics we were especially interested in. So in 2016, we collaborated with a student from the University of Victoria to determine the attitudes of BC veterinarians on various aspects of the issue of cat overpopulation and cat impacts on wildlife. An electronic survey was developed and sent to 1,400 practicing members of the College of Veterinarians of British Columbia. The response rate was 28%. Here are some of the main results. 91% agreed veterinarians play a role in reducing stray and feral cat populations. 55% reported cat overpopulation is a problem in their community, especially in rural areas. 67% supported the principle of low-cost spay-neuter, and 70% perform early-age sterilization upon request. The results were published in 2019, and they're available free online open access in Anthrozois. I would like to take a moment to also thank any of you who participated in the survey. Some more results. The survey also asked veterinarians what they thought the top 4 solutions to cat overpopulation were from a list of options. Low-cost spay-neuter programs were number 1, closely followed by education by municipalities and humane groups, and trap-neuter release programs. From the same question, the next 4 were equally chosen as solutions. So mandatory spay-neuter bylaw, veterinarians educating cat owners, trap-neuter adopt programs, and keeping cats indoors. From the same question, here are the least popular solutions to cat overpopulation. So no free roaming bylaw, cat licensing bylaw, and trap euthanasia programs. So veterinarians did not see these 3 as solutions at all. The survey also asked veterinarians whether they encourage their clients to keep their cats indoors. Almost 80% of veterinarian respondents said yes, for the safety of the cat, for safety for both the cat and wildlife, longer lifespan for the cat, and reduced disease risk for the cat. For the 21% of respondents who did not encourage their clients to keep their cats indoors, the top reasons were behavioral issues, being in a rural community, it's unnatural for a cat to be indoors, and cats have a better life outdoors. This next question was the question of greatest interest to me. Veterinarians were asked if they agree with the statement that after habitat loss, cats were the greatest source of bird mortality to birds and other wildlife. 53% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed. Almost 1/3 were neutral, suggesting they didn't know or were unsure. I saw this as an opportunity to engage, educate, and influence on this topic. When you look at the response by number of years of practicing, most of the disagrees and strongly disagrees were respondents who have been practicing for 30 years or more. The survey then asked 3 separate but similar questions that are lumped into one crazy graph. I will walk you through the main highlights. So first of all, the questions. Which would be the most popular solution with cat owners to reduce cat impacts on wildlife? Those answers are shown in yellow. Which would be the most effective solution to reduce cat impacts on wildlife? That's the green. And then what would be the most practical solution to reduce cat impacts on wildlife? That's in blue. So veterinarians realize that keeping cats indoors is the most effective way to reduce cat impacts on birds and other wildlife. But they also realize that this may not be very popular with cat owners. Veterinarian respondents believe that low-cost spay-neuter is the most popular with cat owners, so likely a barrier for clients as well in terms of cost. They also recognize that this does not translate into a highly effective way to reduce cat impacts on wildlife. Respondents saw bells or whistles as a popular solution for cat owners to reduce their cat impacts on wildlife, but they recognize that these are not effective or practical ways to reduce the impacts. Outdoor enclosures were ranked as somewhat effective, but not popular or practical, particularly when you think about a renter. That said, I think the catio is a newer concept that not many veterinarians were keyed into at the time. If you look at overall popularity, efficacy, and practicality, veterinarian respondents ranked education of cat owners by municipalities and humane groups highly. Education of cat owners by veterinarians was also somewhat popular, effective, and practical solution. So we use this research to inform our next steps and the most effective topics to engage with vets on. So given that 91% of respondents felt that they were a key part of reducing cat overpopulation, and they felt that education of cat owners was highly important, I felt that engaging veterinarians to start or continue to play a role in this regard with their clients was really important. Furthermore, veterinarians often interact with clients at key teachable moments, like the new cat, the injured cat, so they can have a large influence with clients. Also, given that so many veterinarian respondents were neutral on the issue of cat impacts on birds and other wildlife, it confirmed the need for engagement and outreach. Vets are busy, but if we can support them with knowledge and tools from our expertise to help them with their work with cat owners, I think it can be a win for conservation. To this end, I worked with a contractor to find champion veterinarians to deliver presentations to students at each of the 5 Canadian veterinary colleges. We worked closely with these veterinarians on the content of PowerPoint presentations so that they were happy with what they would be delivering. We offered free pizza lunch to attendees because what student doesn't love a free lunch? And these are the topics we covered that I've outlined here in the 3rd bullet. We also wanted to determine how much knowledge change the students underwent after the presentation. So we sent the students an electronic survey to measure these changes in knowledge. And I don't have time to present those results today, but suffice it to say, the results indicated there was a strong increase in knowledge, particularly on the topics relating to cat impacts on wildlife. So that's all I have to say for my section. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it back over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Can I get a thumbs up maybe from you, Tanya, if you can both see and hear me? Awesome. Thanks so much. So I'm going to be rounding out today's discussion by basically sharing some of the SPCA's thoughts on the issue of outdoor cats, as well as sharing some examples and resources for some safe outdoor options that we recommend to the public. So as was discussed earlier, Elizabeth gave some great detail, both from her own slides as well as from Amy's, on the welfare of indoor versus outdoor cats, and the fact that there are actually both risks and benefits to cats being outdoors as well as to being indoors. And there's a trade-off between them. It's not necessarily that indoors is automatically good and outdoors is automatically bad, because of course, as we saw with those photos, there are definitely a ton of health and safety risks to cats who are outdoors. But when they are outdoors, they do have a very stimulating environment and lots of choice that they wouldn't necessarily have when they're indoors. And when you look at indoor cats, of course, they are protected from those health and safety risks, but at the same time, they can deal with boredom and frustration depending on the indoor environment that they're in. And of course, there can be stress, perhaps if they don't have the best relationship with other cats in the household, and the stress can actually lead to stress-related diseases. But if we're going to consider the SPCA, we're thinking about all of these welfare risks and benefits, and also thinking about the potential harms and the real harms to wildlife that are occurring. At the end of the day, the SPCA is recommending that guardians keep cats contained, so both for their own sake as well as for the sake of wildlife. And so this can kind of translate into 3 different scenarios. Of course, you can have cats, as we've mentioned, that can be indoors only. We can have cats that live indoors but have supervised outdoor access, or we can have cats that live indoors that have access to an outdoor enclosure. So the challenges that we face if we're recommending this to the public and to our supporters, of course, is there is a strong view that people have that cats need to go outside, that it's natural for them to be out there. Of course, there's the very real difficulty of transitioning a cat that is used to being outdoors and kind of coming and going as they please, transitioning them to that indoor lifestyle, as they're getting used to a higher degree of confinement. And I think there's a long-standing view of cats as sort of these independent animals that are sort of easy to maintain, easy to look after. But really, if you're going to provide a really good indoor environment for a cat, a lot of effort is required. And so changing that mindset that cats actually need just as much investment as we would give to our dogs, we need to be investing in our cats as well. But rather than just looking at the challenges and throwing up our hands, we really see this as an opportunity as an organization to show people that they can meet the welfare goals of their cats, so we can provide them with good welfare by focusing on those natural cat behaviors and providing them with an outlet for those behaviors in an indoor environment with perhaps some contained access outside. So here I'll be providing some examples, some great visuals, hopefully to inspire you to have conversations with your clients about. So if we're going to talk about the indoor environment, of course, we want spots for cats to rest. We want spots for them to hide, to go to the bathroom, to avoid each other if they want to, if you have a multi-cat household. But perching and stuff is another really important indoor cat behavior. So here's a great example of multiple perching spots for a cat to interact with, because they do really love that vertical space. They're an animal that in the wild would be doing a lot of, being up in trees quite a bit and looking down and surveying the landscape. So we can provide that in our homes as well. But of course, not every client or guardian is going to be able to provide this. So you can do that with a few simple shelves around the house just to provide a few more opportunities. Again, it's providing that choice for those cats can really improve their welfare. And for those of folks who live in an environment, fortunate environment where they can go outside and have a contained environment to hang out with their cat. So if you happen to have a fenced in backyard, on a nice sunny day, you can hang out with your cat and just be watching the whole time as they're kind of exploring in your backyard. And by doing that, you're preventing them from predating on wildlife, keeping them safe, watching over them, and giving them that really great opportunity for all that extra stimulation, all the sights and sounds that are outdoors. And for those cats that have the personality that's suited to, you can definitely harness and leash training is definitely a good opportunity for cats to have that safe interaction, to sort of explore the neighborhood. It's definitely important to provide education to clients that not every cat is going to be suited to this. Some cats are just going to be too nervous when they're outdoors, that we also can't expect them to behave the same as a dog on a leash, that is more about just letting them sniff and amble along as they want and not necessarily leading them anywhere. So don't have any of your own exercise goals per se when you're taking your cats outdoors, because lots of times they'll just end up flopping in the grass and kind of sniffing what's around them. But that's definitely an option that I think is increasing in popularity. Then in terms of structures that can either be attached or near to a house that a cat can go out in, you start with a very basic option, let's say just a window box like this. So the cat can go out from the window into this little area. So not a lot of room to move around, but definitely they're going to be smelling and seeing things that are going by, and increases that stimulation opportunity. Here's a little bit more of an elaborate window box that allows some more movement for the cat, as well as some perching spaces. So this can be an opportunity for some folks to do this. Closing in your patio or your porch. Here you've got two cats with nice wide open doors for the cats to be able to come and go on a nice day. And you can just bring some of those resources that you would have indoors. You can replicate them outdoors with the perching spaces, the resting spaces, even litter boxes and stuff out there as well if you want to. Another example of one that's been built on top of a deck with nice and airy. And then, of course, the freestanding option. So those that do have access to this, that happen to have a backyard where they can actually build a freestanding structure. These are really great because they're usually larger. The disadvantage to them is this one would probably you'd have to carry your cat outdoors to bring them. But some people do get elaborate enough where you actually can build a walkway from your house to the freestanding catio structure. So they're actually able to come and go more as they please. And so thinking of all of these options, we're wanting to recommend them to the public as an organization. We also have to remember the kind of context of what are people actually doing. So here I've got some stats from across Canada done by a national organization a number of years ago. So we see that on average, just about over half of cat guardians are keeping their cats indoors only. We have about 16% that are letting them outdoors, but supervising them the whole time. And then finally, 28% of cats are spending some time outdoors. And when they are unsupervised. Then we did our own survey actually just a few years ago, just so we could get, understanding that BC is often different than other parts of Canada. So just understanding what's going on in our own province. We can see, according to our survey, that we have slightly fewer cats are indoors only. A few more are having supervised outdoor access, and a few more are being outside unsupervised. So this just gives us a sense of basically the room for growth, the areas that I think need increased attention, where we can focus in and improve our efforts to make sure we're getting the message out about these safe outdoor options. Because our survey found that about 14% of cats, they either have access to a catio or a balcony that they can go on, or they get walked on a leash. So I see this percentage both as a good sign that definitely, there are some folks already doing this, but it definitely shows that there's room for growth and improvement here. So for those of you who don't know, the BC SPCA does have a whole bunch of resources on our website, and we're looking to grow those over time as well. So if you go to our website and just type in the search bar at the top, catio, you'll come across our catio building guides. And we actually have guides for all the way from the window box to the sort of enclosed porch structure to the freestanding structure. We have with pretty really straightforward guides with pretty simple materials that are not too expensive if people are into DIY. Of course, there are the more elaborate ones, the kits you can buy that'll be a little more expensive, but if people don't really want to go get their own, wood and stuff like that, they can actually get some structures that are easier, a kit basically that comes to your house. Our website also has leash walking recommendations because I think on social media, people are kind of fascinated by this as a new practice to do with our cats, and might be just want to rush out there, snap a leash on their cat and just head straight outdoors. And so we definitely on our website are emphasizing that people should go slowly with this, so that, you know, at every stage of the process, your cat is feeling safe and comfortable, so that they ultimately do really enjoy their time outside on a leash. And soon we'll actually be coming out with a guide that sort of step by step does this, as well as videos. So you can definitely stay tuned, as well as email me so I can let you know when they've come out, so you can recommend those or share them with your clients. And of course, generally the BC SPCA always just has cat care and behavior tips on our website, because I think when we think of our, you know, two major companions, our dogs and cats, I think that people tend to have an easier time perhaps reading dogs than they do cats. And so I think it's really important that if we're going to be recommending these outdoor options for cats, that we're also doing a better job perhaps of reading their behavior, so we know when they're feeling good and feeling comfortable, as well as maybe when they're feeling stressed and we want to maybe take a step back and go a little more slowly. So definitely check out our website. Thank you so much.
Well, I'd like to thank all our speakers today, Elizabeth, Tanya, and Meghann. It was a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate that. And for further information on cats and birds, the Stewardship Center has all sorts of resources and links to our partners. And you can go to Stewardship Center BC/cats and birds. So with that, we'd like to thank you for attending, and please feel to get in touch with any follow-up questions. Thanks.